I mean, I'd rather live with mom than with you. It was in the dead of night on a Friday, just as the clock struck midnight. My husband, James, was engrossed in an online game in the living room, while I was at the dining table, working on some tasks I brought home. When James casually suggested we live separately, almost as if he was making small talk. Shocked, I asked, why? Although our marriage had been on the rocks recently, I believed I had the right to hear his side of the story. My name is Madison. At midnight on my birthday, right as I turned 35 and was undergoing fertility treatments, James dropped this bomb on me. This unexpected gift left me utterly dumbfounded. Without taking his eyes off his game, James said, "You just turned 35, right? Even if you get pregnant now, it's going to be a high-risk pregnancy. I've given up on having kids with you. That's why I'm going to live with my mom." What? That makes no sense, I retorted. I couldn't see any logical connection between giving up on having children and moving in with his mother. James and I got married the year before last. We had planned to enjoy some time together as newlyweds, but James was eager to start a family. Being the youngest of 3 brothers, with his older brothers already married and each having 3 kids. James was often told by them that it's best to have kids while you're young and energetic. Encouraged by this, we laughed it off and got to work on starting a family, but a year went by without any success. At one point, James snapped, "You need to get this checked out." "Check what?" I replied. "Figure out why we're not having kids." "There must be something wrong with you," he yelled. I was furious at his assumption, but still, I went to see a gynecologist just in case. To my dismay, the tests revealed that I indeed had issues making conception difficult. I was shocked. I had no symptoms and the diagnosis was unexpected. According to Dr. Thompson, it's difficult but not impossible for you to conceive naturally, but sharing this news with James felt daunting. That evening, I tried to calmly explain the situation to James over dinner. James's response was triumphant, as if he had won something. "I knew it was you. But, I can still get pregnant." As I fumbled for words in my defense, James glared at me. "No. It hasn't happened so far, so it's not going to happen." He jumped to conclusions again, and I lost my temper. "For all we know, you could be the one with the issue." Raising my voice, James shouted back. "Madison. The results are clear, and yet you try to pin this on me, unbelievable." In a fit of anger, James slammed his hands on the table, causing me to flinch. "You're just a failure who can't have kids." He spat out before storming off to the bedroom. James's harsh words left me in tears as I cleaned up the dishes alone. I convinced myself that James was just shocked and lashed out. If we could just have a child, we could be a happy couple again. I resolved to keep trying, to win back James's heart. As I started going to the gynecologist regularly, gaining more knowledge, my anxiety grew. Even on the days most likely for conception, we had no luck, and I became obsessed. One morning, I tentatively suggested to James, "Let's try tonight, please." He responded with disdain, "Aren't you embarrassed to bring up such a topic first thing in the morning?" I blushed. Though it felt awkward to say, such discussions should be natural between spouses. Trying to keep my tone gentle, I persuaded, "You want children too, right?" But James coldly retorted, "Honestly, I don't even want kids. They're expensive. I only considered it because my brothers said a man isn't truly an adult until he has a wife and kids, but it's impossible because of you. I've got a perfect excuse now, so I couldn't care less." After that, whenever I tried, James would refuse, claiming he was too busy or too tired. I was also busy and tired from work. Being rejected repeatedly was a blow to my pride as a woman. Lately, James has been hooked on online gaming, staying up late into the night, and as a result, we hardly have any conversations. Let alone intimacy. It seems like James has lost interest not just in having children, but in me as well. Yet, I didn't stop going to the gynecologist. What surprised me about fertility treatment was the number of couples there. The clinic I visit specializes in fertility treatments and is always packed. Even with an appointment, a 2 to 3 hour wait is the norm. Seeing so many couples with the same struggles as mine, all trying their best, was somewhat comforting. Occasionally, I'd see couples, tears of joy streaming down their faces, leaving the doctor's office. The wives, still with flat bellies, would tenderly touch their stomachs, while their husbands walked closely beside them. How I envied them. I wanted a child, too. I wanted to regain James's love and find happiness again. I placed a fragile hope in having a child. But I hit a dead end when I was told that advancing to further treatments would require James to undergo tests. It might be impossible now. The walk back from the clinic always left me feeling desolate and on the verge of tears. Stepping onto the main street, I looked up to see an ostentatiously dressed elderly woman catching my eye. Startled, even my tears retreated. Probably in her 70s. Her thick makeup and brightly colored dress were almost painful to look at. Though I couldn't recall knowing anyone like that, she oddly seemed familiar. Could that be my mother-in-law? Though we live in the same city, we rarely meet, so she looked completely different from what I remembered. But there was no mistaking the distinctive mole on her cheek. Yet, my mother-in-law was supposed to be a modestly dressed, typical grandmother. Shocked by her radical change in appearance, I quickly blended into the crowd. Truth be told, my mother-in-law is quite the character. Indulgent with herself but overly critical of others, she doesn't hesitate to hurl insults that most would balk at. Moreover, she dotes only on her youngest son, James, being the classic toxic parent who shows blatant favoritism among her children, treating the others merely as cash cows. Even her other sons detested her. When my father-in-law was on his deathbed from cancer last year, there was talk of her living with one of her sons. But both the eldest and the second son firmly refused. We thought the discussion would come our way, but she declared she would live alone while she was still healthy. Perhaps out of spite for being refused or just her nature, when my father-in-law passed away, she made a huge fuss, calling everyone ungrateful for stealing an old woman's retirement money, and took all his inheritance without dividing it. Despite my brothers-in-law and James's attempts to divide it legally, she wouldn't budge, and no one could win against her. She told me, "I have no interest in getting along with you, so don't come to my house." But compared to the constant battles she has with my sisters-in-law, it's relatively peaceful. She never noticed me that day and disappeared into a store. The sight of her entering that shop was so out of character for the mother-in-law I knew that I couldn't help but stare at the sign. That night, I debated whether to tell James about his mother but decided against it. After all, she's an adult, and with my father-in-law gone, she's on her own. It's not my place to comment on her personal tastes. After that, I saw her a few times but chose to ignore it. Months passed, and just as my birthday came around, James talked about moving out. I asked him, "Is there someone else you like?" Maybe his mother was just an excuse, and he was planning to remarry. But considering he spends his days gaming at home, it didn't seem like he was seeing anyone. I almost laughed at my own cold logic. James, in his turn, said, "Well, there's a girl in my gaming group I kind of like, but it's just online. For all I know, she could be a guy pretending to be a girl, which only made the situation more absurd. He could make rational judgments there, so why is he suddenly talking about moving?" It made no sense to me. James simply repeated, "I just want to live with my mom more than I want to live with you." I wondered what reason he could possibly have for wanting to live with his mother instead of me. "So, you've come to dislike me? Lost your love for me?" I searched for a satisfying answer, posing the next question to James. Just voicing it made my heart ache. He doesn't need me anymore, a wife who can't bear children. I held back my sadness, waiting for James's response. "Not really." "What?" James's casual reply took me by surprise. "Like I said before, I don't care about having kids anymore. What we need is a different financial strategy." "Financial strategy?" I echoed his unexpected words. James nodded calmly. "Yeah, my mom's inheritance," he said, dead serious. I was confused, failing to see the connection. "My brothers are greedy. They'll use any excuse, like having more kids, to snatch a larger share of mom's inheritance. I won't let that happen. Who's the greedy one here?" I was appalled but kept my thoughts to myself. "But your mother is in great health. Isn't it too early to talk about inheritance?" "That's the point. She dislikes you, but she dotes on me. Living with her now might give me an edge in the inheritance. Plus, there's the sizable fortune my dad left her. We could live comfortably without working hard." We don't have kids to care for us in our old age. So we'll need the money. James explained with a dismissive tone, but I was horrified to understand his reasoning. So, the reason why James wanted children is... So, you needed a child to take care of you in your old age? And now that's not possible, you want a bigger share of your mother's inheritance? I hoped my assumption was wrong as I sought confirmation from James. But his answer was once again the opposite of my wishes. Of course. Kids are supposed to take care of their parents. Living with my mom now might even get me the whole inheritance. James declared. Truly his mother's son, I felt the strong familial ties. No intention of sharing fairly. As I remained silent, James kept talking. When mom passes, I'll come back and live with you. You can't have kids, but you're decent at housework. You're useful as a housekeeper. And you bring in a decent salary as a full-time employee. Understood. Let's get a divorce. My true feelings burst out, cutting across James's words. Who would agree to such terms, to live separately and then live together again? This was too insulting. I knew James, the pampered youngest son, had his faults. But this selfish scheme was unforgivable. Staying with James would never bring me happiness. In that moment, my love for James vanished completely. Let's get a lawyer to properly divide our assets and divorce. Divorce? I never said anything about divorcing. Just living separately is fine. And hiring a lawyer is overkill. James was suddenly flustered but seemed swayed by my explanation. No. You'll feel better as a single man, too. I won't be satisfied unless it's divided fairly and legally. Plus, having a third party involved means no lingering issues, right? James smirked. Maybe you're right. If I get a large portion of mom's inheritance, my future is secure, and I can marry someone else. Don't regret this. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, and make sure you have no regrets. The next day, I got a lawyer recommended by a divorced friend and went for a consultation. I contacted the landlord to inform them that only James would be moving out. I arranged for a moving company. As I made calls, I overheard James telling his mother over the phone, "I want to live with you and take care of you." I was astonished that he had proposed moving out even before consenting his mother. According to James, his mother was thrilled about living with him. She had some requests or something. Thus, the divorce preparations were carried out surprisingly smoothly. Initially, the assets were to be split evenly, but my competent lawyer managed to negotiate in my favor, securing 70% for me, including compensation. Given James's selfish reasons for our divorce, I decided not to hold back and take what was due to me. 3 days after our divorce was finalized and James returned to his family home. As I was relaxing in my apartment, my phone's ringtone sounded. It was James, and as soon as I answered, he pleaded, "Help me. Please, let's get married again. There's no inheritance. Mom spent it all on strippers, she's penniless. Worse, she's drowning in debt from senior loans. And even the house is mortgaged. Well, that's tough. Your mom was really into those strip clubs." I couldn't help but chuckle. That day, I had seen my former mother-in-law disappearing into a strip club. Out of curiosity, I checked the price list on the signboard and was shocked by the figures. I had seen her entering strip clubs several times since, so it was clear she had spent a fortune. Since James got obsessed with online gaming and stopped visiting, she had fallen for a stripper and squandered not only my father-in-law's inheritance but also her retirement savings, ending up heavily in debt from loans even seniors could take. Why didn't you tell me if you knew? I'm not one to criticize personal hobbies. I never stopped you from gaming, did I? I retorted. James stumbled over his words before trying to change the subject. She's asking me to take out loans in my name, but that's impossible. Give me the money from our property division. If we get back together, it's both of our money, right? No way. Why not? You love me, don't you? Your husband is in trouble here. I did love you when we were married. But when you suggested moving out, any love I had for you disappeared completely. Especially now. When it's clear you're only after the money, there's no way we're getting back together. But my mom's telling me to give her all my salary. She says it's only natural for children to support their parents. She was always so kind to me alone. James started to whine pathetically, but his and his mother's mindset, that they should come first and everyone else should cater to them, was all too similar. It was too much self-inflicted misery for me to feel obligated to help. We're divorced now, we're strangers. Your family's problems are yours to solve, I said brightly, hanging up and then blocking his number. I called my former sisters-in-law next. It had only been 3 days since the divorce, and I had planned to wait a bit before telling them, but given the circumstances, sooner seemed better. I shared with them the recent revelations about my former mother-in-law and the details of the divorce. They took pity on me and promised to discipline James. Afterward, apparently, my former brothers-in-law stormed into the family home, causing a major uproar. I heard a bit about it from one of my former sisters-in-law. After James's call, I changed my apartment locks just to be safe, but I decided to move out. It felt like a complete break from the past. While looking for a new place, I learned that the family home was up for sale. I could ask my former sisters-in-law what became of James and his mother, but I chose not to care. I was ready to face forward, leave the past behind, and start anew. I'm considering a pet-friendly apartment for my next place, where I can enjoy a leisurely, free life with a cute cat.